All right, let's just jump right in. Think about this for a second. Deep in some of the most remote places on Earth, there are still people. People who have never seen a car, or a city, or even a photograph. We call them the last isolated tribes. But here's the crazy part. How they got there and why they're still hidden, well, that's a story with two completely different tellings. One version comes from the science books, anthropology. The other? It comes from a wild theory about a lost global empire.
And you can see this wasn't just a one-off thing. Back in the 1960s and 70s, it was like a wave of discovery. Explorers deep in the Amazon jungles or the mountains of Papua were suddenly, stumbling upon these groups. They were coming face to face with people who had been living their own way, totally cut off for centuries, maybe even thousands of years.
So this brings up some huge questions, right? Questions we're going to dig into. I mean, how is it possible in a world that's so connected, with satellites and internet everywhere, how did these groups stay completely off the grid? Was it their choice? Was it because of where they lived? Or is there another reason altogether? And what does it even mean for us, for our own history, that they're still out there?
Okay, so to get some answers, let's start with story number one. This is the official version, the one put together by scientists and historians. It's called the anthropological record. Basically, this is the mainstream explanation for all of this.
And wow, when you look at the records, the sheer variety is just incredible. You've got the Korwai over in Indonesia, living in these amazing tree houses. Then there are the Sentinelese, on an island all by themselves, who are famous for being, well, extremely hostile to any visitors. The point is, every single one of these groups has its own language, its own culture, its own whole way of life. And for scientists, that diversity is the biggest clue. It tells them that these cultures grew on their own, over thousands of years, shaped by the wild places they call home. And if you look at where these tribes are found, you start to see a really clear pattern. It's not just random. We're talking about the toughest places on the planet to get to. Thick, dense rainforests, crazy rugged mountains, totally cut off islands. For a very, very long time, it was these natural walls that just kept them hidden from the rest of the world.
Now, let's be honest. Some of the things explorers reported, they can be pretty shocking. And they definitely got sensationalized. I'm talking about stuff like cannibalism. But the anthropological record gives us some really important context here. It was almost never about just eating people for food. Take a tribe like the Four. They practiced something called endocannibalism. It was actually a deeply spiritual thing. They would consume parts of their own relatives who had passed away. It was a way to honor them, a way to keep their spirit inside the community. Totally different than how it sounds at first.
And, this isn't all just stuff from the history books. Right now, today, it's estimated there are still almost 200 uncontacted groups out there. And we've learned a hard lesson from the past. Contact can be devastating. They have no immunity to our common diseases like the flu. So now a lot of governments actually have laws protecting these areas. It's illegal to even try to make contact, all in an effort to let these unique cultures survive. So that's the established story, the scientific one. But what if it's all wrong? Like completely wrong? What if these tribes aren't echoes of our ancient past? What if they're the result of a massive, world-changing event that happened not that long ago? An event that's been erased from our history books? Well, now we're going to dive into a totally different explanation, one that throws the official timeline right out the window. It's called the Tartarian hypothesis. Yeah, this theory doesn't start with science or maps. It starts with theology. The whole idea hinges on one massive premise, that a key biblical event, the Last Judgment, isn't something that's going to happen. It's something that has already happened. And we, right now, are living in the world that came after, a period this theory calls Satan's little season. So let's unpack this new origin story. The theory goes like this. When this judgment happened, all of humanity was split into two groups. The righteous got to inherit this amazing, technologically advanced global kingdom called Tartaria. But everyone else, the so-called left side, they were cast out into the outer darkness. So according to this idea, the isolated tribes we see today, they aren't ancient people. They're the descendants of the ones who were cast out. And here's where it gets really, really radical. For any of this to be true, our entire understanding of history has to be a complete fabrication, a lie. The people who believe this say that hundreds of years of history were just made up, invented to hide the truth about Tartaria. Some even say the real year isn't what we think it is. They say it's actually closer to something like 1729.
Okay, so let's just pause here for a second. We've got two explanations for the exact same thing, these isolated tribes, and they could not be more different. One is all about physical evidence, geography, and slow migration over thousands of years. The other is about a spiritual event, a divine judgment, and a history that was totally rewritten. Let's really break it down, side by side. The scientific view, it says they're isolated because of mountains and jungles. The Tartarian view, it says they were cast out as a punishment. Science says their story goes back thousands of years. The hypothesis says it all happened very recently. And maybe most important, science sees them as diverse, unique human cultures. The hypothesis, it sees them as the uncivilized people who were left behind.
So, what are we supposed to make of all this? We've got the exact same set of facts that these tribes exist, but they're being used to build two completely different stories about our world, about our past. It really makes you stop and think about how we make sense of the world, doesn't it? And here's the bottom line. The existence of these tribes, that's a fact. No one disputes that. But what that fact means, well, that seems to depend entirely on the story you choose to believe. So when we see a blurry photograph of one of these people, what are we actually looking at? Is it a window into our own deep, ancient history? Or is it evidence of a massive, hidden cataclysm? It's a question that makes you wonder about the difference between evidence and a story.